This is Don Blomdahl, Hall of Fame veteran sports cards and collectibles coming to you live. I'm sorry. Pre-recorded from Arlington, Washington. Sorry, this is attempt number 2 at getting the 2006 all 18 inductees up onto a stream for tomorrow. So I'm going to try to record this again and go through all the inductees. Of course, again, we've got Ray Brown, Willard Brown, Andy Cooper, Frank Grant, Pete Hill, Biz Mackey, Effa Manley, Jose Mendez, Alex Pompez, Cumberland Posey, Louis Santop, Bruce Sutter, Mule Suttles, Ben Taylor, Cristobal Torriente, Sol White, J.L. Wilkinson, and Judd Wilson are all 18 of our Hall of Famers out there. Okay, so pretty much for sake of time of taking them back out of my binder like I did the first time, I'm just going to go through, and my little trusty magnifier here will magnify the person that I'm highlighting, so you know. I do have a complete set of all the Hall of Famer cards, and since I started this series, I did get in my 2019 Hall of Fame postcards to complete my set, all up to date through 2019. So we're going to go ahead and get right into this, and much of this stream we can get uploaded. Hopefully I can get the whole thing this time instead of part of it. So we're going to start out with Ray Brown. All right, so Ray Brown, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006. His primary team was the Homestead Grays, and primary position was a pitcher. Era where every ticket sold meant that much more than jobs. Raymond Brown was the pitcher of choice in the Negro Leagues. He's what they called their Sunday pitcher, said Negro Leagues historian James Riley. They'd pitch their best on Sunday to draw a crowd, and nobody was better. Born February 23rd, 1908 in Alger, Ohio, the 6'1", 195-pound Brown developed a reputation while still an amateur as an all-round star on the diamond. After short stints with pro teams in Indianapolis and Detroit, Brown hooked on with Composey's Homestead Grays, blossoming Negro Leagues powerhouse. In 14 seasons with the Grays, Brown became one of the great stars of the African-American baseball leading team to 8 pennants in one 9-year span. His vast repertoire of pitches included sinkers, sliders, even knuckleballs, but his curve was his go-to offering. So confident was Ray in all of his pitches that he would throw a curve with a 3-0 count on the batter. Riley said he had good control of all his pitches. In 1938, the Pittsburgh Courier newspaper listed Brown as one of 5 Negro League stars who would be certain major leaguers allowed to play. The others, Cool Papa Bell, Josh Gibson, Buck Leonard, and Satchel Paige, all have been enshrined in the Hall of Fame. Brown, who became Posey's son-in-law after marrying his daughter Ethel, threw a one-hitter in the 1944 Negro League World Series, leading the Grays to the title, and pitched a perfect game in 1945. Brown also starred in Winter League play during his post-ERA, an incredible 21-4 record with Santa Clara of the Cuban Winter League in 1936 while hitting .311 at the plate. He completed 23 of his 26 starts that season in Negro Leagues. In the Negro Leagues, Brown appeared in 2 East-West All-Star games, compiled a 3-2 record in 7 Negro League World Series games, and finished his Negro League career with a 105 and 44. Brown pitched in the Mexican League and the Canadian Provincial League before retiring following the 1953 season. Brown passed away on February 8, 1965, and he was elected to the Hall of Fame in 2006. So that is our first Hall of Famer for 2006. Next, we have Willard Brown. This is Willard Brown's postcard right here. So Willard Brown is our next inductee into the Hall of Fame for 2006. So Willard Jesse Brown, inducted in 2009, batting average, tell the most incomplete story possible of a player who was Willard Brown. His Hall of Fame plaque, however, speaks volumes about the pioneer who was one of the Negro League's greatest power hitters. He was the most natural ball player I ever saw, said Negro League's legend Buck O'Neil. Home Run Brown, named by future Hall of Famer Josh Gibson, began his pro baseball career with the Negro minor league Monroe Monarchs before being called up to the Kansas City Monarchs of Negro League Baseball in 1935. Brown quickly became one of the league's most formidable hitters, leading the loop with 8 home runs in 1937 and 6 in 1938, helped lead the Monarchs to 5 pennants between 1937 and 1942, and also played the Mexican League. Usually played center field, the 5'11", 200-pound Brown again led the Negro Leagues in home runs in 1942 and 1943 before serving in the Army the next 2 years during World War II. He was among those sailing on 5,000 ships that crossed the English Channel during the D-Day invasion of 1944. In 1946, Brown returned to baseball, and the Monarchs again paced the league with 13 home runs. The next season, Hank Thompson and Brown became the second and third black players when they signed with the St. Louis Browns on July 17, 1947. The Browns, however, sent the duo straight to the majors. The adjustment proved difficult as Willard Brown played in just 21 games between July 19th and August 21st before he was released. During his time in the majors, however, Brown became the first African American to homer in the American League when he connected off future Hall of Famer Hal Newhouser of the Tigers on August 13th after his release. Brown returned to the Monarchs, then played 2 more years in Kansas City, leading the league with 18 homers. Brown hit an outstanding 432 with 27 homers and just 234 at-bats for Santurce of the Puerto Rican Winter League, and he won Triple Crown in the PRWL. Brown continued to play organized baseball through the 1958 season, hitting 35 home runs and driving in 120 runs in the Texas League in 1954. He finished his Negro League career with a .351 batting average in 475 games. Brown passed away on August 4th, 1996, and he was elected into the Hall of Fame in 2006. So Willard Brown. Next we have Andy Cooper. Andy Cooper. Let me go to his card real quick here. Andy Cooper. Andy Cooper. Getting close here. Andrew Lewis Cooper. Right here. All right, Andrew Lewis Cooper, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006. Primary team, Kansas City Monarchs. Primary position was a pitcher. A baseball player who spent his entirety of his playing career in the shadows of the major league due to the color of his skin. Andy Cooper was made made a name for himself in black baseball due to his mound mastery. Negro Leagues historian Dick Clark once said of Cooper, "My estimation, the greatest black pitcher ever to pitch for Detroit. That's for the Stars or the Tigers." Born in Waco, Texas, pounds of him, spent the majority of his Negro League's career as a durable and consistent left-handed hurler with the Detroit Stars and the Kansas City Monarchs over a two-decade career that spanned the 1920s and the 1930s. Included among Cooper's many accolades, the accomplishments during his playing days was a 43-inning stretch with the Stars in which he didn't issue a base on balls, winning twice as many games as he lost, and both the Stars and Monarchs helping lead Kansas City to the Negro League National League pennant 1937 playoff game against the Chicago American Giants, and taking the mound in 1936 East-West All-Star game at the age of 40. According to a scouting report prepared by famed Negro Leagues player and with a total command of all his pitches, which include a running fastball, tight curveball, and biting screwball. Andy never possessed the lack sterling control, wrote Russ J. Cohens in 1941 in the Chicago Defender, one of the top black newspapers of the day. Cooper could almost put the ball any place he wanted it to go. In addition, Cooper trying to improve my connection there. He knew the weakness of every batter in the league and would pitch to that weakness when he was on the mound. A top pitcher early in his career who became a valuable reliever near the end. Cooper would also turn to managing. Cooper was a smart manager and a great teacher, said Monarchs pitcher and fellow Hall of Famer Hilton Smith. After Cooper's death in 1941, Chicago Defender wrote, "He not only won glory on the hurling mound, but also won respect and praise of the fans through his deportment off the field." So there we have it. Andrew Lewis Cooper. All right, moving on to our next one is Frank Grant. We probably got to go a little ways back for Frank Grant here. Gordon Wilson Griffin Grant. I think he's, yes. This is him right here, where the magnifier sits is the Hall of Famer we are on. All right, Ulysses Franklin Grant, Hall of Famer in 2006, and his primary team was the Cuban Giants, and he was a second baseman. Were it not for the fact that he was a colored man, he would without a doubt be at the top notch of the records among the finest teams in the country. So begins a contemporary press account of Ulysses Frank Grant, perhaps the best of the African American players who played in white organized baseball in the 1880s, before the color line was drawn. Grant was a quick, agile, skilled second baseman and also a pitcher at the very beginning of his career. He was known as the Black Dunlap, a reference to Fred Dunlap, one of the best fielding white second basemen of the decade. After playing with semi-pro teams in his native Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and in Plattsburgh, New York, Grant joined Meridian, Connecticut team in the Eastern League in 1886. Grant led the team with a batting average of .316 when the team folded in July. He and two teammates, both former major leaguers, reported to Buffalo of the International League, one step below the majors. Grant led the team with a .344 batting average and drew strong press throughout the league for his play in the field. The following year, he again led the Bisons with a .353. As a hitter, he had punch, racking up lots of extra base hits. The 87 season was pivotal for African American players in organized baseball, and in mid-season, including George Stovey and Fleetwood Walker, faced discrimination on second base to protect him from spikings. He was thrown at by pitchers repeatedly, and on several occasions his own teammates threatened to strike before he continued to play, and refused to pose for team portraits if he was included. However, he continued to lead his team in hitting, and batting .346 in 1888. The following season, he relented to the changing environments, one of the leading African American clubs at the time. He played through the 1903 season with several of the leading black clubs, including the Page Fence Giants and the Philadelphia Giants. Hall of Famer Saul White, a player, manager, and writer on the early years of black baseball, said, in those days, Frank Grant was the baseball marvel. His playing was a revelation to his fellow teammates as well as the spectators. In hitting, he ranked with the best, and fielding bordered and on the impossible. Grant was born a ball player. So there we have it. Ulysses Frank Hill is our next. Pete Hill. There we go. Pete Hill. Our next inductee for 2006. So we have John Preston Hill, inducted in the Hall of Fame in 2006. His primary team was the Chicago American Giants, and he was Woods of the Culpeper County, Virginia, to become one of the most feared line drive hitters in the game. His baseball years run roughly from 1889 to the mid-1920s and involved some of the pioneer programs of black baseball. Is considered to be a great center fielder with a rocket arm and excellent glove. His talents also extended to the batter's box, where he was a consistent line drive hitter with outstanding speed on the base paths. One quote from the book Shades of Glory, The Negro Leagues and the Story of the African American Baseball, describes Hill as a restless type, always in motion, jumping back and forth, trying to draw a throw from the pitcher. Baseball historians Jim Riley has said that if an all-star outfield was created from the pre-1920 era, it would include Ty Cobb, Tris Speaker, and Pete Hill. The Chicago Defender supports this, as noted from an article in 1910. Hill can do anything a white player can. He can hit, run, throw, and is what is termed a wise head ball player. He played for some legendary teams, including Pittsburgh Keystones, the Cuban X-Giants, Philadelphia Giants, Leland Giants, and the Chicago American Giants. His knowledge of the game was also noted as he closed his career by serving as the player manager for the Detroit Stars, Milwaukee Bears, and the Baltimore Black Sox. After retiring from baseball and moving to Buffalo, he also helped form the Buffalo Red Caps. There was no part of the game in which he was not involved. In 1944, Hall of Famer Cumberland Posey selected Pete Hill to his all-star team and referred to his as the most consistent hitter of his lifetime. A lot of people forget about the baseball players who were pioneers of the game. They've forgotten like they never existed. They were part of American history, say Hill's great nephew, Ron Hill. Who can you talk about baseball without talking about Pete Hill? As for his final legacy, perhaps Chicago Defender summed it up best in 1951 when sports writer Fay Young said that Hill helped put Negro League baseball on the map. So John Preston Hill was our next Hall of Famer, inducted in 2006. Now on to Biz Mackey. Biz Mackey. Got to go back a little ways here. Here's the K's. On to Biz Mackey. Right here. So James Rowley Mackey, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006. His primary team was the Hilldale Giants, and his primary position was a catcher. Though somewhat overshadowed by such legendary names as Josh Gibson and Roy Campanella, when black baseball's top catchers are discussed, Biz Mackey should be considered one of the greatest players of his era. Actually, as much as I admired Campanella as catcher, veteran Negro or catcher. Mackey would don the tools of ignorance tens to the mid-40s, whether a member of the Hilldale Giants, Philadelphia Stars, Newark Eagles, Indianapolis ABCs, or Baltimore Washington Elite Giants, he always proved to be a leader behind the plate or later as a manager. Fellow Hall of Famer Posey, a longtime Negro League executive, once said, "For combined hitting, thinking, throwing, and physical endowment, there was never been another like Biz Mackey. A tremendous hitter, a fierce competitor, he is the standout among catchers." A line drive hitter whose batting average rarely strayed below 300, Mackey named to 5 East-West All-Star teams, was a favorite receiver among pitchers, and had a strong throwing arm. "I've pitched to some great catchers, but my goodness, that Mackey was to my ideal the best one I pitched to," said Hall of Famer hurler Hilton Smith. He was marvelous. Mackey has been given credit for furthering the development of a number of Negro Leaguers who would go on to success in the major leagues, such as Campanella, Monty Irvin, and Larry Doby. In my opinion, Biz Mackey, the master of defense of all catchers, Campanella said. "When I was a kid in Philadelphia, I saw both Mackey and Mickey Cochran in their primes. But for real, catching skills, I don't think Cochran was a master of defense that Mackey was." 2006. Next, we have our first female in the Hall of Fame, Effa Manley. Effa Manley, right here. This is Effa Manley's placard card here. Effa Manley, inducted in 2006. His primary team was the Newark Eagles, and Effa Manley wanted to be a winner. Though the only woman when the Newark Eagles, owned by her and her husband, Abe, won the Negro Leagues World Series, defeating the famed Kansas City Monarchs. Her election to the National Hall of Fame as the institution's first woman electee is a reflection of her commitment to baseball and civil rights, serving as a tribute to Negro League baseball. Born March 27, 1897, Manley grew up in Philadelphia, but her commitment to the game and civil rights began when she moved to New York following high school. Often found at Yankee Stadium watching Babe Ruth, Manley dedicated her time to local social organizations and causes. For example, in 1935, she walked the picket line in a successful campaign to get local businesses to hire Black employees, a "Don't Buy Where You Can't Work" campaign. While attending one of the World Series games in 1932, Manley met her future husband, Abe, and the rest his reputation in the local community as a baseball man. Together, they forged a partnership that resulted in the rapid rise to fame of the Newark Eagles, a team they owned from 1935, moved from Brooklyn to Newark in 1936 until she sold the club to a group of investors in 1948. Manley's involvement in baseball in the 1930s and 40s came at included handling contracts and travel schedules for the Eagles, and she quickly gained recognition across the league for her ability to promote the team. Fellow owner Posey, also among the 17 electees to the Hall of Fame this summer, remarked that the league could earn something from Manley's keen sense of promotion. Man and off the field, assisting players players with jobs, serving as godparents to some, and purchasing a $15,000 bus for the team's travel, always working to get players the best available accommodations on the road. Perhaps Manley's greatest contribution as an owner would come in her final years with the Eagles, following Branch Rickey's signing of Jackie Robinson from the Negro Leagues to play the major leagues in 1947. Manley and the Negro Leagues received compensation for Larry Doby, the first African American to play in the American League, thereby a precedent for player compensation. The move showed the legitimacy of the Negro Leagues, giving the leagues a measure of respectability never before seen from the majors. Throughout her ownership, Manley pushed the envelope to develop a better league, emerging as a leading voice among Negro Leagues and businesswoman, wrote Chicago Defender reporter Faye Young in December of 1943. Manley also used her position with the club to promote a variety of causes and benefits. The team invited soldiers during World War II to Eagles games for free. The club hosted benefits for causes such as the Harlem Fight for Freedom Committee and the Newark Community Hospital. One of the benefit games promoted Stop Lynching theme, with ticket takers collecting donations and wearing ashes to promote the cause. The Eagles boasted a number of excellent players during Manley's tenure as owner, and their success Eagles rosters included future Hall of Famers Ray Dambridge, Leon Day, Larry Doby, Monty Irvin, Biz Mackey, Mule Suttles, and Willie Wells. Following her ownership tenure, Manley co-authored a book on black baseball with Leon Hardwick, and she donated her scrapbook to the National Baseball Hall of Fame. She also wrote letters lobbying for Negro Leaguers to be admitted into Cooperstown. When she found a closed door, Manley kicked it open to improve her league as her team's playing conditions. As a result, Manley will be remembered forever as a member of the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Effa L. Manley, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006. So next we have Jose Mendez. Jose Mendez is our next Hall of Famer. Jose Mendez. Okay, where's that one at? Jose Mendez. Oh, Mendez. M-E. Got a ways, get through the M's. Here we go. Easy to find his name. It is so long. So Jose Mendez. Now I know why they called him Jose Mendez. Jose de la Caridad Mendez del Valle. Try and say that really fast 5 times. His primary team was the Cuban Stars, and his primary position was a pitcher. In 1912, Hall of Fame manager John McGraw would say, if Jose Mendez was a white man, I would pay $50,000 for his release from Almendarez. And that Mendez was sort of Walter Johnson. Alexander rolled into one. Although he spent his entire career playing either in Cuba or the Negro Leagues of North America, during his prime, Mendez faced major league competition and exhibition games, besting some of the best, including Hall of Famer pitcher Christy Mathewson and Eddie Plank. After a 1911 tour of Cuba, Ira Thomas said, "More than one big leaguer from the States has faced him and left the plate with a wholesome respect for the great Cuban star. It is not alone my opinion, but the opinion of many others who have seen Mendez pitch that he ranks the best in the game." Nicknamed the Black Diamond, the Cuban-born hurler had a lean, wiry frame with deceptively hard fastball and a sharp curveball. He was also able to keep hitters off balance because of his ability to change speed so well. Arm trouble in 1914 times, but it was not until the 1924 Negro Leagues World Series that Mendez's pitching arm would again feature prominently. When a player manager for the Kansas City Monarchs, Mendez went 2-0 with the 1.42 ERA in 4 pitching appearances in the series and led the Monarchs to the Negro Leagues World Championship. In her memoirs, Mrs. John McGraw recalled of her husband whenever Mendez pitched against the Giants without any player alone, Jose de la Caridad Mendez is our next Hall of Famer. Was an executive. The affable leagues during his 35 years as his era Francisco Giants organization. Son of Cuban immigrant stars participating in the Eastern Colored Five and renovated Dyckman Oval, making the Cubans the sole New York-based team with its own signed the black circuits. Alejandro Ohms, Juan Tetelo, baseball fans constantly dealing with players' jump success. They dropped a 7-game series to the Pittsburgh Crawfords in 1935, the NNL pennant, and lost in 1941 the NNL playoff to the Homestead Grays before winning the 1947 Negro League World Series over Cleveland. Pompez often served as a peacemaker. The first Negro Colored League before the collapse in 1920. Starting to maintain viability, Pompez negotiated for the Cuban New York Giants farm team in 1948 to 1950. In 1951, the Giants hired him to scout. He introduced to the Negro and Major Leagues included future Hall of Famer Orlando Cepeda, Diego Juan Marichal, and Willie McCovey, along with All-Stars Franco Coimbra, Horacio Martinez, Minoso, Ohms, Tony Taylor, and Felipe Alou. He contributed to the legacy of black baseball by signing African American and Latino on the Hall of Fame Blue Ribbon Committee on the Negro Leagues from 1974 to 1971. So there we go. We have that. Alejandro Pompez, Hall of Famer, inducted in 2006. Next on our dockets, we have Cumberland Posey. Cumberland Posey, which is right next door to him right here, so I didn't even have to turn the page. Cumberland Posey. Cumberland Willis Posey Jr., inducted into the Hall of Fame, the Prince manager, owner, and a club official before succumbing to cancer. Powerful and profitable in college, Posey began baseball for the semi-pro Grays and business manager. He took control of the Grays in 1920 and turned them into a highly successful regional enterprise as an independent team. The Grays' strong identity in Pennsylvania and surrounding states enabled them to survive the depths of the Great Depression. Posey, an aggressive talent seeker with the Grays in the early game, not that season. He later became an officer of the Negro League and was major force in its media, a frequent critic of the league, both before was strong on the way to the top of the ladder. But no matter what his critics say, 2006 and D scream through these. So Louis Santop, the S is here. So Santop, Louis Santop, right here where the magnifier shines. Louis Santop, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006. With primary team was the Hilldale Daisies, and he was a catcher. Louis Santop has been called the first of the great Negro League sluggers and the first Negro League superstar. Born in Tyler, Texas, Santop was huge for his day, standing 6'4" and weighing in at 240 pounds. primarily a catcher, he also played the corner field and outfield positions. He was known as Big Bertha after a large piece of German heavy artillery. While he was gifted slugger who hit mammoth drives in the dead ball era, he also hit for extremely high averages in the upper 300s and lower 400s. He broke in with the Fort Worth Wonders in 1909, and the following season he played with the Philadelphia Giants, where he formed the famous Kid Battery with Cannonball Redding. For the next 4 seasons, he caught for the New York Lincoln Giants, where he formed a future Hall of Fame battery with Smokey Joe Williams. In 1915, he played briefly with the Chicago American Giants before returning east to play with the Lincoln Giants. The two teams met in postseason championship and ended up tied. He also played in the Black World Series for the Hillsdale Daisies in 1921, 1924, 1925, winning in 21 and 25 dollars per month in the teens and 20s. There are stories of him calling his home run shots, and he often gave pregame throwing exhibitions, throwing a ball over the center field fence while standing at the catcher's position, and then crouching and firing repeatedly to each infielder, amazing onlookers with his powerful arm. He served in the Navy in 1918 and 19 in exhibitions against white major leaguers. Is remembered for having out-hit Babe Ruth in 1920 postseason series, notching 3 hits against Carl Mays of the Yankees, while the Babe recorded none. In a 1917 series, Santop recorded 6 hits in 3 games against Chief Bender and Joe Bush. In the mid-1920s, Top was replaced as catcher by another Hall of Famer, Biz Mackey. After a couple of years pinch-hitting duty, so there we go, Louis Santop, 2006 inductee. Moving on, next on our list at Louis Santop is Bruce Sutter. Bruce Sutter? Bruce Sutter. Let's see, move on to Bruce Sutter here. Spalding, Stenson. Oops, should be right here. Bruce Sutter, here we go. Sorry, missed him. I was looking at Suttles and Sutter's just before him. Okay. Bruce Sutter, one of our more contemporary baseball players, made it into the Hall of Fame in 2006. Primary team was the Chicago Cubs, and his primary position was a pitcher. So he's the greatest relief pitcher that I've seen in my 45 years in baseball. Were the lofty words of Cubs manager Herman Franks used to describe his star closer, Bruce Sutter. Sutter was on the fringes of professional baseball, a struggling minor league pitcher with an injured arm, until he received a gift that changed his life forever. A new pitch, a split-fingered fastball, was taught to him by a wise old man of the game, and in a matter of years, Sutter took his new weapon and blazed a trail as one of the game's top relievers. So it was with Sutter when Cubs roving minor league pitching coach Fred Martin stepped into his life in 1973. Martin had been trying to teach Cubs farmhands this new pitch, a derivation of the forkball called the split-fingered fastball, with little success, but he now had an apt pupil in Sutter who needed something new to keep his big leg dream alive, and Sutter took to the pitch in which the thumb pushes the ball out from between widespread fingers, imparting a wicked forward spin to the ball. In 1977, Sutter was entrenched as the Cubs' closer, finishing with 31 saves, garnering the first of 6 All-Star Game invitations. The Sutter name became known throughout all the baseball world, with his remarkable 1979 season winning the National League Cy Young Award and tying senior circuit record with 37 saves. Cubs starting pitchers certainly appreciated seeing Sutter in the bullpen, with Ray Burris once saying, he always lights he was lights out when he came in. As a starter, you knew if you got into the 7th or 8th inning that the game was pretty well sealed. Dealt to the St. Louis Cardinals before the 1981 campaign, Sutter proved to be the missing piece for the championship caliber club. Not only did he average almost 32 saves over the 4 seasons he was with the Cards, establishing a National League record for most saves in a season in the 1982 World Series. He had the best makeup of any closer I've ever seen, said Whitey Herzog, the St. Louis managers. Come on, there we go. He just cut the percentages down from 27 outs a game to 21. And after leaving St. Louis as a free agent, Sutter spent 4 injury-plagued years with the Braves. Though he played in only 12 major league seasons, Sutter certainly made his mark as the preeminent closer of his era. Using his revolutionary split-fingered fastball, he finished with 300 career saves, which ranked 3rd all-time when he left the game. It was in the Cubs minor league system that I met all the way to the Hall of Fame, Sutter said. His name was Fred Martin. So there we go. Howard Bruce Sutter, 2006. Mule Suttles right next to Bruce here. Mule Suttles, inducted in 2006. And his primary team was, of course, the Newark Eagles, and he was a first baseman. George Mule Suttles was almost lost to history, as noted in a local Tuscaloosa News article following the 2006 induction into the Baseball Hall of Fame. He was born at the start of a century that's passed in a town that no longer exists. He played for teams that have long since folded, in leagues that closed up shop more than 50 years ago. Even so, the reputation of Mule Suttles was sufficient to ensure he placed on the Hall of Fame ballot when the time came. Noted for his soft-spoken personality, Suttles was not known to draw attention to himself. According to teammate Red Moore, he didn't get the ballyhoo that Satchel and Josh got. They were the ones who it seemed all the sports writers put all the praise on. Mules was a powerful hitter. I can't fathom why he didn't get the publicity they got. He was a laid-back person. He didn't do much talking. He wasn't the boasting type. Sometimes the better players get over Negro League Baseball. From 1921 to 1944, he starred with some of the great squads of segregated baseball, including the Newark Eagles, Chicago American Giants, and the Birmingham Black Barons. He boasts a lifetime batting average more than .325 and was particularly known for his power, according to Moore. Fans and opponents would gather to watch him at batting practice. They come out to see him hit the ball. I can tell you he was get the ball a long way. In batting practice, he hit some tape measure balls. He could really hit it for the distance. His skills were so noted by his contemporaries, and having been selected to play in 5 East-West Classic All-Star games, where in 1933 he knocked his first home run ever in the event. In addition to his baseball skills, Suttles was also known as a good teammate, often serving as a father figure to the younger players. He is fondly remembered by teammates who recall his kind nature and willingness to do anything to help win a game. As noted by Red Moore, he was kind of a genteel person. He was friendly, but when he was on the field, he went to play. He was all business. We always wondered why Uncle George was never mentioned, said his niece Early, who accepted his plaque during the ceremony in Cooperstown. They always mentioned Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson and Cool Papa Bell, but never mentioned Uncle George. We're now saying he's getting his just rewards. For this to come up now, we're all just thrilled to death. So there we have it, George Suttles, commonly known in the day as Mule Suttles. Now next on our list of 2006 Hall of Famers is Ben Taylor. Ben Taylor, right down here. So these three are all on the same page here. Ben Taylor. Benjamin Harrison Taylor, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006. His primary team was the Indianapolis ABCs. Primary position was first baseman. Belonging to one of the most famous families in black baseball history, Ben Taylor had a career that spanned almost 4 decades, serving as a premier first baseman as a Farm John and Candy Jim. Ben Taylor starred for a number of teams in the Pro Negro Leagues of 1908 to 1920, and then moved around the various leagues and teams during the golden era of 1921 to 1941. While most of his playing career involved squads for which there are few reliable statistics, Taylor was a lifetime 300 hitter who maintained a scientific approach to the game. He was noted for his ability to hit to all fields, his execution of the hit and run, and became known as Old Reliable for both his clutch hitting and his outstanding defensive play. At first base, he was soft-spoken and well-respected. Learning from Ben Taylor, he helped me when I first broke in with his team. He had been the best first baseman in Negro baseball up until that time in 1835. Taylor was described as a man who has inspired, trained, and led baseball teams for many years, having one of the keenest minds of all baseball and knows the game from all angles. After his death in 1953, the Chicago Defender said simply, Ben was recognized as one of the first that of other top first sackers of that period. He was an excellent fielder and a cracking good hitter from the left side. As biographer Todd Bolton has noted, Ben Taylor's life can be summed up from 10 words on his gravestone: a graceful player, a superb teacher, and a true gentleman. Ben Taylor, Benjamin Harrison Taylor, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006. Next we have Cristobal Torriente. Cristobal Torriente. Cristobal Torriente, right here, Cristobal Torriente. As we're getting close to wrapping up our 2006 inductees, Cristobal Torriente, Hall of Famer 2006. His primary team was the Chicago American Giants, and he was a center fielder. The Black Babe Ruth was the nickname Torriente acquired in the fall of 1920. The New York Giants plus Ruth visited Torriente's native Cuba for a 9-game hit and homered Ruth, and all of the Torriente came stateside in 1913 to play. Appropriately enough for the Cuban Stars, he played 7 seasons in the teens for the J.L. Wilkinson's All-Nations team. He joined the Chicago American Giants in 1918, helping the team capture the first 3 Negro League pennants in 1920 to 1922. He won the league batting title in 1920 and 23, and he joined the Kansas City Monarchs in 1926. American career in the early 1930s with Gilkerson's Union Giants, the Atlanta Black Crackers, and the Cleveland Cubs. Like many players, Torriente had a parallel winter career with the Cuban Winter League in 13 seasons in his homeland. He hit over 311 times and won 2 batting titles. His teams won 6 Cuban championships in those 13 seasons. He was a left-handed ball hitter with dynamic high 300s and low 400s. Speed seemed odd from such a stocky player, but he covered a lot of ground and an accurate and powerful arm. He also was on occasion a pitcher in the Negro National League, compiling 15 career wins against just a handful of losses. Torriente, as light-skinned Cuban, might well have played in the major leagues, but the scouts who looked at him rejected him because his hair was too kinky. Regardless of his hair, he was an all-round great ball player. As Indianapolis ABC's manager C.I. Taylor put it, if I should see Torriente walking up the other side of the street, I would say, there walks a ball club. He was among 10 original inductees into the Cuban Baseball Hall of Fame in 1939 and was voted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame in 2006. Cristobal Torriente, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006. Our next one, as we wrap down, Sol White. Getting closer to the end here, so we should be wrapping things up here. Sol White. All right. Sol White. So we got Sol White, Jay Wilkinson, and Judd Wilson left to go. Sol White, his full actual real name is King Solomon White. Inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006, Philadelphia Giants was his primary team, and he was an executive. Someday the bar will drop and some good man will be chosen from out of the colored profession that will be a credit to all and pave the way for others to follow, said Sol White once. Sol White was 78 years old, living in Harlem in 1947 when Jackie Robinson shattered the major league color barrier. Who knows if White was in attendance at Ebbets Field that day, or maybe home listening on the radio. No newspaper sought out the old man to interview him, but it's a pity since White watched the color barrier descend back in the 1880s. A seminal figure in black baseball, Sol White was a player on both black and white teams, a manager, a coach, an official, a sports writer, and a historian. He began his playing career at the age of 19 while a student at Wilberforce University with the Pittsburgh Keystones, a team in the League of Colored Baseball Clubs which folded after 1 week. He immediately joined a white team, the Wheeling Greenstockings, and batted .370. The following season, his teammates forced his release. White was a hard-hitting infielder, an intense competitor, and a quiet leader. From 1889 to 91, he played for teams which played with otherwise white leagues in New York, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut. In the 3 seasons, he hit .324, .356, and .375 against white professional competition, giving him a lifetime average of .356 in organized baseball. In 1902, White organized the Philadelphia Giants, among the best of the pre-Negro Leagues teams. The Giants won the colored championship every year from 1904 to 1907. The 1906 Giants, who went 108-31, made an offer to play either the National League pennant-winning Chicago Cubs or the World Series winning White Sox, but neither team responded to the offer. While White was a player or a player manager on 6 other colored championship teams in the pre-Negro Leagues, pre-era 1920. White retired in 1912, but came back as a secretary of the Columbus Buckeyes in the Negro League National League in 1920. He left Columbus to manage the Cleveland Browns in the NNL 1924 and coached for the New York Stars in 1926. Perhaps White's greatest contribution to baseball was the author of the first book of African American baseball, The History of Baseball, published in 1907. While White spent his later years as a sports columnist for the New York Amsterdam News and the Cleveland Advocate, he was elected to the National Baseball Hall of Fame in 2006. Saul White, King Solomon White, inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2006. Our next to last 2006, J.L. Wilkinson. J.L. Wilkinson, right down here just below Solomon White there. J.L. Wilkinson, James Leslie Wilkinson, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006. His primary team was the Kansas City Monarchs, and he also was an executive. A white man, Wilkinson is regarded as one of the most innovative and creative Negro League's owners. He was the principal owner of the Kansas City Monarchs from 1920 to 1948, one of less than a handful of dominant Negro League's teams. The Monarchs ruled two separate leagues in two separate times. A charter member of the Negro National Leagues in 1920. The team won its pennant 4 times in the 20s, in 1924, 23, 26, and 29. Then, as a charter member of the Negro, Wilkinson 2 of 4 Negro League World Series, in which they played. Of the Eastern Colored League, they won the initial series when the competition resumed in 1942, beating the Homestead Grays. From 1931 to 1937, when Black League Baseball was in difficult financial straits, Wilkinson earned the Monarchs into a pure barnstorming club, drawing on their substantial popularity in the Midwest to enable the team to play additional games at night in addition to their daytime schedule. And as a drawing card, Wilkinson spent his own money on a portable lighting system, trucking it along behind the team bus when the Monarchs hit the road. 7 current Hall of Famers elected as Negro Leaguers: Cool Papa Bell, Bill Foster, Satchel Paige, Bill Rogan, Hilton Smith, Turkey Stearns, and Willie Wells played for Wilkinson's Monarchs, as did Jackie Robinson, Ernie Banks, and Elston Howard, among others, before integrating White organized baseball. Wilkinson began his baseball career in his home state of Iowa as a pitcher until he hurt his arm. He then became a baseball entrepreneur, first in 1909 with a traveling women's team. In 1912, he organized the All Nations in Des Moines, the team which had Black, white, and Indian American players, as well as members from Latin America and Asia. Wow, that was back in the early 1900s. They had Asian players. Was a top barnstorming club until broken up by World War I's demand for several of its players. Wilkinson by then had made the larger city of Kansas City his base and reorganized his team as the Monarchs after the war. So there we have it. J.L. Wilkinson, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006 as an executive. So Hall of Famer, Judd Wilson. Judd Wilson, and he was a third baseman. So this is our last Hall of Famer. Get a good connection here. According to outfielder Ted Page, Wilson was strong enough to go bear hunting with a switch. None other than the great Satchel Paige considered him to be among the best hitters he ever faced. Ernest Judson Wilson was known throughout the Negro Leagues as Boojum because of the sound of his hits bouncing off the outfield walls. Boojum, I guess. Boojum. As the balls hit the wall. They must have been pretty hard hit balls. One article stated that he was probably the hardest hitter Negro baseball has ever seen. Ill-tempered and fearless, Wilson terrorized pitchers with his hitting and umpires with his nasty reputation for arguing almost every call. He was wide-shouldered and short-legged, standing only 5'8" and weighed 195 pounds. And batting left-handed, he played in both American Negro Leagues and the Cuban Winter League, following a stint with the U.S. Army during World War I. From the early 1920s through the World War II, Wilson starred for one of the greatest teams in all of black baseball, including the Baltimore Black Sox, the Homestead Grays, the Pittsburgh Crawfords, and the Philadelphia Stars. He regularly batted over 300 and is considered to be among the top 5 hitters for average in the Negro Leagues. His career batting in the Negro Leagues and above 370 in the Winter Leagues. Wilson had limited defensive skills at third base, often using his chest to stop a hard hit balls. And at bat, he would crowd the play and thereby ensuring he was often playing hurt. However, he was known for playing through many injuries and for a fierce competitive drive that he used to incite teammates to work harder and to drive opponents to distraction. His numerous altercations with umpires and opponents ensued. His reputation would precede him at every stop. There were no pitchers who wanted to face him, few umpires that wanted to call balls and strikes for him. Having played against all the great black pitchers and many of the white stars in exhibition games, Wilson made it perfectly clear he just did not like pitchers, regardless of their color. He remained in Washington, D.C. area after his playing days and died in June of 1963. Wilson is buried at the Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia as a veteran. Ernest Judson Wilson, Judd, or Bahoom, as his balls hit the backstops in the outfield. All right, Judd Wilson rounds out the end of our 2006 inductee series. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully I get a lot more loaded up in this second installment for this video feed. I'll keep both up so you can see how I used to do it, but I think I'm going to switch to this format here. But when I do have the players' baseball cards, I'll probably throw them in here too, especially when we get into some of the newer ones. Some of the old ones, I might not have some of their cards. It just depends on what I have. But this is fun. This is a fun video series that I dearly enjoy doing, and look forward to next week with our 2005 inductees for our Friday video series. So this is Don Blomdahl, Hall of Fame veteran, sports cards and collectibles, signing off for now with our 2006 inductee video series. So until Saturday, which is the next time I'll be live, this is Don Blomdahl, Hall of Fame veteran, sports cards and collectibles, signing off for this installment in our Hall of Fame Friday video series for inductees through the years, going back in time. All right, you guys have a great day, and we'll see you for my next live stream on Saturday for our Box Break Saturday. I'm almost positive it's going to be my Collector's Choice 1991 Upper Deck box that I'm going to break open that day. So looking forward to that live feed. All right, bye for now.